1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm giving myself a top to edit off while Craig figures its shit. It actually seems like it's doing fine now, so maybe I'll just go.
You have to keep this all on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Guess what, everybody? It's the Loose... You probably knew that. It's the Loose Screws podcast. In case this came up randomly as if you finished some other podcast and then it switched to this one without your permission, I'm going to let you know that this is the Loose Screws podcast and you've made a terrible mistake. I'm Commander J Antrax, and no, wait, I haven't done the other part yet. It is number 272 of this podcast for the 13th of February in 2025.
33011.
33011.
Wee. And I'm joined tonight by Commander Baromir.
Yeah, that's me. I'm technically unemployed. More on that later. It's great.
And Commander Bloomingwind.
Greetings, everybody.
And that's it. It's gonna be fast and tight tonight. Just wish I had that one to do again. Oh well. How is everybody doing? How are you? I'm gonna start with Bloomingwind. How is life treating you these days?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you and the squadron kind of know what's going on. So 2 weeks ago, I was on the show, and I had to break away 5 minutes prior to it finishing because I had a GI bug and I got sick again. And then and so my PCP told my wife that if I get sick a third time, I go to the emergency room. So we went to the emergency room, and of course they draw a troponin because nausea, vomiting, and belly pain is a heart attack. It isn't. I had the lowest troponin in the history of my employer, so I was really happy about that. But then they decided to go get a CAT scan. And during the CAT scan, my IV blew, so they kicked me out of the CAT scanner for a trauma. And then they brought me back after they got a new IV, and then they finally do the CAT scan. And by that point in the night, I was so fed up with being in the emergency room, and I just wanted to go home. And I'm like, well, let me see if I have a small bowel obstruction. Let me see if I need my gallbladder out. Let me see if it's my appendix. So I have my laptop. I have access
it's
to
just so funny when doctors doctor themselves.
Exactly. It's hilarious. So I open up the CAT scan and I'm like scrolling through. It hasn't even been read yet. And I'm like zipping through, loops of bowel, this, that, and the other thing. Oh, good. No coronary calcium. Moving through. And then I'm like, what the hell is that on my kidney? And then all of a sudden, holy shit, why did somebody circle it? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, crap. And then it said 3 centimeters. So I start going through the medical literature, looking for the most recent AUA review article. And it's like 3 centimeters, probably a good sign. And so anyway, I have a 3 centimeter mass on my right kidney. So my wife calls a friend of ours who's the head of oncology at WashU, who's a urologic oncologist. I call a friend of mine at our institution as well, and he's at the AUA meeting writing the guidelines as we speak. So we both talk to our friends, and they're both like, dude, you're going to be fine. So I have to have half of my kidney removed. It's going to be on March 18th. So a bunch of our shenanigans in the last 2 weeks is me getting tests for it, trying to plan for being out of work because, I'm going to have to miss 3 weeks of work. I met with the surgeon yesterday. He seems really like a good guy and knows what he's doing, which is the more important part. He could have been a jerk, but as long as he knew what he was doing, I'm completely fine with it. So I'm going to be A-okay. There's no lymph nodes, no spread, no nothing. It's just going to be lop off half a kidney and call it a day. But
so wait. Is a kidney like a liver in that you can do that? You can like retain some function with half of one, or?
Yeah. So we have so many nephrons in our 2 kidneys that essentially a normal healthy individual only needs about 1/4 of one kidney to get all the work done. So as you get
Wow.
older, you lose nephrons, and your kidneys last. All things being equal, you live a good, clean life. Your kidneys can last 140 years before they run out of gas.
Gosh, I'm not planning on lasting that long.
No one's
No.
planning on lasting that long. That's the beauty of the design of the kidneys. So people often, they'll donate a kidney. They'll have a kidney stolen from them on the black market if they got roofied in Tijuana. They can have a
Yeah,
kidney
just
get
average
infarcted.
Saturday.
Average Saturday. There's a lot of ways that, you can lose a single kidney. My dad infarcted one of his kidneys when I was a second grader. And you can go on and you can do really well. I mean, sometimes it does catch up with you in your 70s or 80s in those situations, but the kidney's very redundant. So 20 years ago, they probably would have taken out my entire kidney. But with the surgical techniques now, they can just take out part of it in this situation and sew it back up. And so I'll be working on 1.5 kidneys.
Hmm.
So,
All
but yeah,
right.
but it doesn't grow back like a liver. So livers are really interesting in that way, in that you can, have a partial, you can have like a lobe resected, and essentially the function, synthetic capacity, like the liver that part of the liver can grow back. We've actually had situations where a parent would donate a lobe of their liver to their child who had liver failure as a
Right. Yeah.
donor, and that little liver nugget can grow with the child as they grow up into an adult, into a full-size liver. I mean, I don't know how the Greek myth about Prometheus having his liver ripped out, and it regenerated, how they knew that. like, I mean, that's either some time machine or some alien shit. But that's one of those things that always was one of the mysteries of the universe, is that how did that myth come about? Because real people livers regenerate too. It's not just, Titans.
Not just the old Greeks. Yeah.
Nope. So that's been a big chunk of our last 2 weeks. And then yesterday, Dr. and Mrs. Bloomingwin's department got shut down at her employer. So
Yikes.
she is going to be
Wow.
leaving her position on March 31st. That's her last day of work. And then she's already looking for things, and everything's going to be A-okay. But it's just one of those situations where it was just like, she kind of saw it coming, and she was kind of looking, but she didn't want to leave because she just got her doctorate, and the employer paid for a big chunk of it. And so she would have to pay them back if she left. And so she's been kind of playing this game of the writing's on the wall. She gets a severance. Her loan would get forgiven. Like the company one would get forgiven. And so she was kind of playing this game of chicken. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, like, we have a meeting tomorrow. And she's like, oh, crap. So, but she's like, hey, I'm going to pay that loan back.
Yeah. Huh.
So all will be right with the world. But it was just yet another corporate downsizing in our universe.
Right.
When it rains, it pours.
Yeah. Well, glad to hear the excellent prognosis, I guess. Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quotes, but still.
It's the good kind of cancer.
Yeah, great kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, if you're going to get one, it's kind of, kind of the kind you want to get.
Right.
Yeah. And then in game, I've been doing the Distant Screws 3, and I'm about like 6,000, 7,000 light years from the bubble, and having a good old time just making my way through the galaxy.
Very nice.
Yep.
All right. How's it going in Baramir's world?
Yeah, that's a tough act to follow, Blue. Man.
Don't worry, I've
glad
got
you're-
nothing too. So
Well, I'm glad you're doing well, Bloom. And,
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you guys have had a very busy few weeks for sure. In my world, yeah. So yesterday was my last day of my old job, and it had my goodbyes, and I was eulogized quite a bit yesterday. There was cake.
wow.
It's a big deal when they
I love
bring in the cake. Cake is great. I did request, because I kind of knew there was going to be a cake. I did request that they would write, good riddance on the cake. They did not. Did not. It was very hallmarky, but it was sweet. Today marks my 2 days of unemployment. No. So I would start work on Monday at the new gig, but I kind of timed it out where I get a long weekend a chance to go what I like to call back to school shopping. Kind of create a clean break in the chapter. You get a couple of shirts, couple of pants, type of thing. Actually had lunch with my new team today, kind of close to their office, and that was kind of nice to kind of jump the gun and sit with 5 or 6 guys I'll be working with pretty closely starting next week. So that was pretty nice. Pretty nice day. Otherwise, I'm catching up on Severance. I was a couple of weeks behind you guys. If you're not watching Severance, I don't know if we're allowed to plug things on this podcast, but
Sure.
it's great. It's a fantastic TV show. Twists and turns. Lovely.
I think I've
lovely
only
TV
seen
show.
2 episodes of this season so far. So yeah.
Yeah, it's well, you saw last season. That's got to be good enough to keep you going.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're in. We're just
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, it's great. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. In game, I am also right around 4,000 light years away from the bubble, doing some loose screws, disc screws, 3 type things, and it's my first time out in the black, and yeah, I think I'm getting a little bit of space madness. My paint job is starting to slowly rub off on my ship, and I'm never gonna fix it. Just gonna keep letting it go.
Right. That's what I do. Hey, have you noticed? I think the Super Cruise overcharge makes your paint rip off so fast. Because like my Cobra 5 is already totally shredded.
I think there's something to that. I'm using it a ton. I still will. So I'm in the DBX, so it's still not very stable in
Yeah.
SEO. But if I see something 100, maybe 150 light seconds away, I will SEO over it. I've got 9 heat sinks on this thing just for that reason. And I think there's something to that. I'm doing that a lot.
Yeah.
The paint is coming off pretty quickly.
The Mandalay paint job's been holding up a little bit, though. I'm kind of surprised that it.
You think
I
it's
haven't-
different for different ships? Well,
I
the
don't-
Mandalay, okay, now that's interesting that you say that though, because the Mandalay is like the most stable and the most fuel efficient.
It's
I wonder
wild.
if it scales by like how fast, because it goes so much slower in
Yeah.
Super Cruise Overcharged than the other ships too, but it's like wildly more efficient. If it's like the variable that's causing your paint that determines the paint like chip rate is to
Yeah.
do with the fuel consumption or something. Wow.
Yeah, because you have to be using that all the time. And
I am.
Italy. Yeah.
No, I
Oh,
am
yeah.
for sure. Yeah, it's just
so nice.
short distances, long distances. I had a system with is like 250,000 light seconds away, and I was like, oh yeah, and I was there very quick. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really where the SEO really was really nice. Is just this really far thing that would be kind of annoying, and I can get there much quicker.
Yeah, I had jumping around doing PowerPlay crap. Sometimes it would send me to, one time in particular, send me to like an annoying system where it's like, 300,000 light seconds away from the star. And I was like, and I've been flying a Mandalay all over the place. Well, this is like day 1 of Cobra Mark 5. And I'm like, 300,000, give me a break. Meet 300,000 light seconds, meet my Super Cruise overcharge. And I made it maybe 80,000 before I was like in fuel danger territory. And I was like, oh shit, this is not a Mandalay. This is extremely different. I had to stop and go normal Super Cruise speed or I was going to run out of fuel. And then of course in normal cruise speed, I was like, had tons of fuel left over, tons, like 10%, but it was like fine. But I was going to be, have an empty tank before I was a third of the way there.
In those times
sure.
that I do need to boost 100, 150,000 light seconds in the DBX, I do need to check to see if the secondary star is scoopable.
Right.
That is pretty important. But that's what I got going on. Tracks. How was your?
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I just jumped right into the. I haven't been playing Elite much. I had quite a bit of work to do and stuff like that. But I don't know. I had time to play games. Just didn't quite feel like So here's what's going on. Most of my friends are on this expedition. You see, they're all out, and hardly anybody's back here power playing. And I just discovered today that probably the main reason why when I asked, is anybody doing any power play tonight, one night, and got 0 response, it's because apparently Audaxius was sick and was like laid up in bed. And apparently he's the only reason I play this game anymore. So I've not picked it up again until tonight. I was I did play Veil VR one night. They have a new update that this is like a competitive shooter, like a Call of Duty or Counter-Strike like team-based shooter in VR, and quite like it. It's very fun. But they have a new game mode that is essentially a map playlist that's only the objective-based maps. So like the deathmatch style maps are not in there. So it's only the ones where you actually have to coordinate and complete an objective, like, like a search and destroy kind of situation. So there are way fewer squeakers, is what it comes down to. Like, I don't mind playing deathmatch type things once in a while, but you know who doesn't like playing only objective based is the 11-year-olds. So that's nice.
That was my question. Yep.
Yeah. The 11-year-olds whose parents bought them a Quest are much more seldom in those. There's maybe one per match, and that's much easier to mute. So yeah. Anyway, so I went a week and didn't do. I think I only got like one of my weekly PowerPlay tasks done. So shame on me, because those are mandatory.
That's what I hear.
Mandatory for who?
For whom?
For whom?
Not meant on the YouTube.
Yes, please pick a side on the YouTube comments. Okay. Anyway, I think what we'll do is check in with the squad update and check in with the PowerPlay status of the universe. And there's nothing else going on. Well, no, you know what? There's one other thing going on. And then after that, maybe we'll do some more shop talk. I was thinking maybe we tackle lasers in depth.
Lasers is great.
Lasers is great. All right, good. Shields went over really well, I think. I'm pretty sure we did shields. My memory is failing me, but anyway. Okay. I forgot to. Okay, good. I'm not crazy. Forgot to open the thing. We're just going to click real quick, and everything's going to be great. Authorize. Why do I have to authorize this every time I open it? And here we are. It's time for a squad update.
Incoming priority message.
Squadron briefing.
Alrighty, we have a legion of overheating systems as usual, and they all end in Andromeda. So they need to get beat down, as does Kama. We have wars and elections going on. Miola is the priority war that we want to win. There are two systems that we are at war in. One is LTT 17102, and we are leaving that alone. That is the system controlled by the Halcyonian Knights, where negotiations many moons ago broke down and led to quite the conflagration where the entire Bubbleverse was, had a hit put on me because of a misinterpreted kind of situation. Anyway, apparently what they're doing is they're slowly and systematically taking every asset away from every faction within the system, which is a really stupid thing to do, but it's their system. They can do whatever they want. Because once in a while, you want to be able to dump bounties and dump cardo to another faction against yourself. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just like, do what you want, fools. And then in Balmus, the Sorrows Battalion has come back to the game, and they asked us very nicely if they could assume management of their native system. And because they asked so nicely, we said, sure, we are happy to do that, because this is what people do when people ask nicely. And we really didn't, Balmus wasn't burning a hole in our pocket, and we still have some assets there, and they're going to let us keep some assets there because of what we just mentioned, in case they need to cool themselves off, in case what have you. Yeah, I mean, so there's plenty of room for everybody in Balmus. We're expanding again, probably from Lambda Andromeda, probably to Calarum.
Oh God.
I know. It's just it never ends.
Why won't they just let us have that hole filled? Again, people who just don't fucking understand the BGS.
Well, I mean, we're going there. It wasn't planned. It happened. We're going to land there and call it a day and leave it the hell alone, because you never know what happens if we don't leave it the hell alone. We are in a new system from our last expansion, Maidubii. So they need a little boost. So smoke Maidubii.
Okay.
And then, as we're getting closer and closer to Trailblazers, which we'll talk about briefly later, we're still trying to push Semakhmets up as high as humanly possible. So eventually it'll be the system that triggers an expansion for us, because we were trying to do this whole get ourselves out to grid so we can just kind of go out into the black. Since Trailblazers is coming out sooner than we're going to be at grid, I think we'll be using a combination of colonization and maybe BGS expansions to kind of get us out of the bubble. And then we're also trying to get the top faction in Gliese 9016 to expand as well, and that will complete phase 1 of our New Horizons project once they and Semakhmets expand. So there's a lot going on in the BGS universe. All of it's in the standing orders. Any questions you have, you can talk to us in the Loose Screws faction channel of our Discord. So that's what's going on in Squad Update.
Wonderful. Sounds great. And now, for something very important, the short PP report. I'm doing it.
This is the short PP report.
It's average, so get your facts straight.
You know when you make a joke and you're the only one that laughs at it?
You mean like I've been doing for the last 20 seconds?
No, it's still great. It still hits hard. All right, well, let's start off with standings changes.
Standings changes? Now, this is a surprise. Okay.
That's it. No, that was the whole thing. There are no changes in standings. To be fair, Archer is likely still closing the gap to Lee Young Rui in the standings. And that's Rui is in 5th and Archer's in 6th, kind of strongly in the mid pack. But really, no one has changed. Everyone's still gaining systems, which is good to see. Eventually, it was great before the Trailblazers, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We were going to run out of systems in the bubble. Then there would have been conflict. Now I'm starting to think there might not be any real conflict. We'll have to see what happens when the borders start to get a little bit more, congested and hot. But until then, we've got some time to go. There were some fantastic conflicts though this week that, started one of our colleagues next door, but mostly had Archer in them. So let's start off with the one non-Archer really cool conflict. This was still the fight between the two Imperial ladies, the Arissa Lavigne Duval and Aisling Duval. I'm going to get corrected every single time. The guy's serious.
It's like a Celtic name. It's Aisling. It really
Aisling.
is.
Okay, yeah. Aisling. All right. Well, I apologize for anybody.
That's all right.
I didn't with all pronunciations. Aisling Duval. This conflict was in Lamani. We'll call it Lamani, and it was 516,000 control points from Arissa, and only 335,000 from Aisling. And that was a pretty big conflict for them. They still were reinforcing a lot of systems, but that was a pretty big battle for the Imps. On the other side of the map, the very far side of the map, we had Edmund Mahon versus Jerome Archer. The first of 3 Archer conflicts we'll talk about today. And that was 417,000 control points put up by Mahon and 308,000 control points put up by Jerome Archer and friends. Mahon did keep that system. And today's 16C Ursae Majoris is Mahon's. So congratulations, guys. Good job. Following up with that, we have LTT 9315 that starred Archon Delane with a rousing 359,000 control points to Archer's 300,000 control points, which means Delane gets one more system. LTT 9315 is squarely in control of the Pirate King. And lastly, another Jerome Archer conflict, but this time with our good friends, the kale sipping smoothie Pranav Eintal and Songoris is the name of that system. The silent P over there. That was 479,000 control points by Antel versus the 356,000 control points put up from Archer. 3 conflicts. Archer won none of them. So let's just be clear about that. That's fantastic. That's good news. But they just put up about 1 million control points throughout those 3 conflicts, and we're still reinforcing systems. So still very impressive by all parties. A ton of work still going on, and power play conflicts are still happening, but those were the top 4 from cycle 15. Cycle 16 this week, if you're playing with us, our objectives are the same as last week. I think I saw a total of 1,000 control points be put up by our by the Lee Rui folks in our Discord this week. So we're away. We're taking a vacation.
Yeah.
We've got some other things going on. But that's Ross 310 reinforcing our special op in Tamor is still active to reinforce with our good friends, the After Dark Initiative. Our new acquisition target from last week is Wolf 10. That's still on the front. To our friends, well, no, not our friends, but Vago with Archer being our, undermining target. And I don't mind saying that because, whatever.
Because they
We're
know
there.
about it. It's fine.
Hey, it's there. And that is it. So, folks, if you want to hear more about what we have going on with PowerPlay, go ahead and get onto the Discord, the Loose Screws Discord. Go to the PowerPlay channel and check out what we got going on. And that is that.
Thank you very much for that fantastic Lee Short PP report. And okay, so Galnet, no, there's no Galnet. There's no dev news. Nothing's been said. Nothing's
Galnet.
happened. Nothing's changed. No, there isn't any Galnet.
There's not a new Galnet, but there was an update to the CG.
Yeah,
which
but
is
it didn't
the
make
last
Galnet.
It did
The
not
C-
make Galnet.
The update is the
Oh.
CG continues to Brewer Corporation survey initiative to get exploration data and turned in the system, and in fact the station, the megaship where they want this data delivered to, that system has been driven into lockdown by commanders who wanted to stir some shit, and they succeeded in stirring some shit, and now you can't turn in exploration data. So that CG has been halted. And what we got was a tweet and an in-game message. I think there was an in-game message, wasn't there?
There was. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
it all the way out 6,500 light years away from the bubble.
Yeah.
They said, hey,
How to cure lockdown? Bounty hunting. Come do bounty hunting. So I mean, that's cool. I guess this counts as player-driven narrative. I mean, fair's fair. They, it's kind of like they say in all the CGs, the market conditions, if it's a delivery CG, the market conditions can affect the availability of goods. And that does happen. You often have to, change what was available near the beginning will stop being available, and you have to go from stations further and further out and stuff like that. Lots of things can happen. And this CG did not have a combat arm of it. So the players did something anyway. And the only intervention from FDev is they put a little note in there just in case people needed a reminder that, lockdown can be cleared by the same BGS mechanics that were used to cause it. Well, I suppose the reciprocal of those.
So is it bounty for bounty? Is it bounty credits versus bounty credits essentially? So bounties earned through crime versus bounties turned in killing better.
Well, it sounds like you're asking about thresholds, right? Which I wouldn't really know. Do you know, Bloom?
Yeah, I do. So, the faction has a security lever, a security bar, and if you bounty hunt and deliver bounties, you turn in bounties, you raise the security lever of that faction within that system. Now, if crimes are committed, against, and it's a controlling system. So if a lot of crimes are committed, especially at bases controlled by it, that'll bring the security down. So you could be doing a lot of on-ground stuff. You could just be plain old committing crimes in a system, and it brings the controlling factions security down. So there's a lot of ways to bring down the security lever, and if you do that, eventually you get down to lockdown. So, yeah.
So crime, like you said, there's a lot of ways. Crime is killing people, though, right?
Yeah, but also black market can bring security down.
Okay.
If you,
I'm sure they just, to make it easy,
of,
they would just do killing innocent ships, right? That would be the very fast and easy way to do it.
Yeah, that's the fast and easy way to do it, but that only affects the controlling faction. If you do passenger missions and you stress them out, like if you rub your ship against the space station until they all abandon the mission, that can lower security as well.
I thought you were going to say dump them into space.
Well, eventually you dump them into space. I don't know how much the dumping into space does it, but I know getting them to complain and abandon the mission is what moves it down. Because there was a whole thing where we were trying to decrease influence somewhere and decrease the security somewhere, and we're doing that. So
cool.
So a bad Yelp review will lower the
exactly.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. And to restore that, then it's basically bounty hunting.
That's the easiest way to do it. Yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So that's what people got to do: bounty hunt. So all of you commanders who went and went out deep and made several million or billion in exploration data that you were going to come back and deliver to this CG, and now it's locked down. Easy. Just go engage in combat in your current state while you're holding all that exploration data. No problem, right?
Yeah, from what I saw, there was 10 billion in bounty turn-in in that system.
Oh, people are raging on it. Okay, good.
Yeah,
I was kind of making a quip, or trying to make a quip about how vulnerable they must feel carrying all that exploration data.
I did get ganked on the first day of my DBX, so it's real.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there's the news. They didn't do anything else like add a bounty hunting CG. It's just you're going to have to fix this problem, or you won't be able to add any more to the CG. If anyone else wants to contribute, you gotta get this done first. So.
Yeah, they did expand the dates, but they said they're pushing it till next Tuesday. But they're like, yeah, you broke it, you fix it.
Yep.
And I mean, that's fine. I mean, there's on some of the elite Facebook forums about this CG. I mean, these people are miserable. I mean, there was like people complaining about the CG in and of itself, and then once it got locked down, there was like a whole complaining about why would people do this and why would people lock it down. I mean, like, it's part of the game. And I thought it was an actually interesting twist. I mean, it's not how I get my jollies is like, oh, let's lock down, fuck up the CG and lock it down.
Inconvenience people, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's not my idea of a good time. But it was just funny because like this one person was like, I can buy a V1 DSS scanner for mats. Why would I want to participate in the CG? Because
it's not it's right. You do it for fun, not because you need the thing, right?
Right. And it's like, well, but why is it fun? I mean, there was this person was like, it's not fun for me. And I'm like, well, everyone else was like, well, then don't do it. It was
what are you worried
like,
about?
I know. It was like the most stupid thing. And it was like, well, I can get mats so easily now. And I'm like,
so you're mad that you're not allowed to do the thing that you think isn't fun? That's the complaint?
I think they're mad that other people are having fun doing something that they think that they shouldn't be having fun doing, and
I'm having fun.
And then getting rewarded for the fun with something that they feel that is very easily gettable, even if you weren't having fun.
There's no way to shake this that it doesn't diagnosable as mental illness.
It was very clearly mental illness. I mean, I was just like, I was like reading it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to Twitter because it's a lot more civilized than this.
Oh my
forum.
God.
I mean, like this person was like a moron, and and
my Lord.
and one of my buddies in that forum, he's like the voice of reason. He just had no words. He was just like, you're an idiot, and there's nothing we can do about that.
We can't save you. It's a fun answer to the thing about avoiding PvP through solo mode.
Yeah.
Right, because here they've just done BGS PvP, didn't they?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what mode you're in because it had nothing to do with that. So,
yeah, and some people just like watching the world burn, and I'm like, there's nothing you do about it, but it's fine. I mean, it's hopefully you've gotten your. I mean, from my perspective, I mean, FDev didn't even need to extend it a few days. It was nice of them to do it. They're doing it over President's Weekend when a whole bunch of people might have a little extra free time on their hands or not. But
you could explain that in lore too. Brewer extended the deadline because of the circumstances, and they're calling for aid.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of like the player gameplay. I mean, maybe they could have gotten a Galnet node in, but I don't know how they're doing Galnet now. And that if Galnet's all they have some intern who writes it all up, and then it's all scheduled to be dumped, so they don't necessarily put something out on the fly.
Yeah,
because they've done some things in the past where they put stuff on the fly, but it's not abundantly clear to me that they've even come back to work yet from Christmas.
Yeah, it sounds like they have like a trial to Gronk AI, and that's what's doing the Galnet articles.
Yeah.
Free trial. Yeah. All right. Well, that's all well and good. Congratulations to everybody on the thing. Like, I honestly is the fun part of exploration. It has absolutely nothing to do with turning it in. So anyway, so. And this module isn't unique or hard to get. It's great. All right, we're all good here.
Yeah.
Good luck to the bounty hunters. I support you wholeheartedly. Okay. Discussion topics. So I said, we people like this. I'm slowly coming to terms with that. So, lasers. Now this came up on. Somebody asked about this in Discord, and I think it was probably a couple of weeks ago, and they got just about the full force of my rant there. But now I'm going to do it on the podcast. But I think the people seem to be interested in this. Not all this stuff is totally obvious on its face. So, here's what I want. I'm gonna go on a tear here, and feel free to pipe in or ask questions or make sure I'm explaining myself thoroughly. Keep me honest. All the things. Interact as you see fit, because I want to make sure I'm doing a good job. And I didn't actually prepare, but anyway. Okay. So lasers, let's go over lasers. There's three basic kinds of lasers, and then there's a couple of the unique PowerPlay ones that we talked about. The Cyto Scrambler's the only one worth paying attention to, but okay. So the three basic types of laser: pulse, and burst, and beam. The basic deal is they get stronger as they go up in that order, but they draw more energy. Now, pulse and burst are exactly the same energy per damage. I should say damage per energy. You know what I mean? So a pulse laser is going to deal, if a pulse laser deals 10 damage and draws X amount of energy for that, the burst laser deals that 10 damage faster, but draws the energy faster by exactly the same amount. So it's literally just how long, however long you pull the trigger, it takes a little longer for the pulse laser to deal that amount of damage, but your distributor is going to last a little longer. Or you could think of it the other way around. If you were jousting, then the burst laser is going to be better because it's going to deal out that damage a little quicker, and then you've got time between shots. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
The beam is the continuous fire weapon. It breaks this a little bit. It does more damage still than the burst laser, but it uses even more energy than the previous equation. So you're paying for that extra damage with a little bit of damage per energy penalty. Make sense?
Is it less efficient than the burst?
Yeah.
Like, so the DPE is worse?
Right. The damage per energy is worse. The damage is higher, but it's like, if the damage goes up to 15, the energy goes up to, 18 or something.
Right.
I don't have the actual numbers in front of me, but it is using more energy per damage than the other two lasers are. So that's kind of how I tend to think about it until you get into engineering. And of course, I don't ever do anything without engineering. So
Now, before we go to engineering, should you talk a little bit about the difference between fixed turret and gimbaled for our newer pilots?
yeah, and this goes for pretty much any gun. You're losing something like 20 or 25% of the damage when you go to a gimbal mount. And there again, when you go to a turreted mount. So you're sacrificing damage for, what you could think of as like a greater ability to hit the enemy in most situations, but it's vulnerable to chaff. So it is a pretty significant damage drop, but that's only if you could actually connect the whole time with a fixed laser, right? So there is something to say because a laser is like a hit scan weapon, right? It has no flight time. You don't have to lead your target. It may be easier to use in that sense in a fixed configuration. And you do get, quite a big damage buff from that. But because it's a damage over time weapon, it's not like shooting a cannon shell and then you can line up for the next shot and pull the trigger again. You have to kind of continually pour the damage onto your target. So I do tend to go with gimbals on lasers more often, even though I like a lot of fixed guns. It does change the energy usage somewhat. I haven't paid a ton of attention to exactly the way this works, but gimbals use more energy, and I think sometimes turrets actually use less.
Yeah, turrets definitely use less, have a lower draw.
Yeah, and I paid attention to that, especially with the beam laser, because in Thargoid combat, I got really used to traditionally you'd have a thermal vent beam laser, and some people use a fixed, or a gimbal is really common. I started using turrets because their energy level was lower.
Yeah.
And I could just leave it on all the time. Now, the heat generation was also a little lower, which means that directly influences how much the thermal vent cools the ship. But, I sort of calculated and work it out. Sometimes I'd end up with 2 smalls or something, and it would be totally enough and not drain my capacitor too much.
Yeah, it seems like thermal load is significantly less with a turreted laser.
With a turret, yeah.
Yeah, and I did the same thing with my anti-Zito ship. Is I have a turret beam, a size 3 turret beam, and it's worked pretty good for me.
Right, because
it can sit
really
there.
the thing you're going for.
Right, exactly. In that case, you really are just using it for cooling, and it does a little bit of damage to like the Thargoid's shield during that time. But some of the ships, like with a Krite anti-Xeno Krite build, the size 7 distributor is so massive you can like leave your beams on all the time, and sometimes during attack runs, which is like not usually the way to go. But I was managing to do that quite a bit. Just leave the beam on all the time and forego heat sinks entirely, which is pretty cool. So there's some sort of energy differences and things like that. But as far as the comparing the weapon types, that holds through as far as damage per energy is concerned. And then the mounts, I think. Let me just pull this open on ADSY and see what we've got for Okay, so let's grab a fixed laser, a gimbaled, and a turreted laser, and look at their distributor draw. Okay, so on a burst laser, the fixed uses 0.5 megawatt. The gimbaled uses about the same. It says 0.49 on here, and the turret uses 0.275, so almost half. So it seems like the fixed and gimbaled use about the same distributor energy, while the turret uses like half. I want to make sure that that is the same for pulse. Pulse is in a different spot on here. Pulse lasers. Let's do pulse lasers and see if that holds true. Okay. Yes. And in fact, it's almost exactly the same for a pulse laser. Okay. Cool. So the thing that everybody knows about lasers is that beam lasers can use thermal vent, which cools the ship when it's striking the target. And it cools the ship by the amount of heat that the weapon draws or creates. So technically, the gimbaled beam laser will cool the ship more than a turret will, but the heat per energy ratio is better for a turret if it's enough to actually cool the ship. Depends on what size laser you want. Really important for Thargoid combat. I don't use those a ton outside of that, though. Do you guys use beam lasers?
I
If
use
I
them
have-
for I use them for PVE. So like
Yeah.
I just use them to melt shields and CZs on my Corvette and whatnot. And I have them all thermal vent so that I don't overheat. But the one thing is with thermal vent is if you're not on target, if you're just firing, your ship heats faster
Yeah.
than you would if you didn't have that modification. So that's something to, if you're using
Mhm.
thermal vent, stay on target.
Yeah, if I have a PVE, I had a PVE Python at one point that was just all beams. It was a terrible idea for overheating. So I stuck a couple of thermal vents on those smaller ones, and that just really helped cool me down. Well, other than that, I wouldn't normally put them on there. That was really specific. Everything was beam lasers.
Yeah.
Really specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a special or a experimental effect. What are the other experimentals you used then on a beam laser? Because I've never put something other than thermal vent on a beam laser.
I'm so partial. I think it's so funny to use was it thermal shock? Um,
Oh,
that just heats up the other ship. Is that one?
Yep. Thermal conduit, I thought.
Just one
let's
increases
look.
damage.
Hold on. Thermal shock, target heat increased. Thermal conduit is the one where that's different. That's the one where the damage goes up when your ship is hot. So this is one you can put that on plasma accelerators as well. So if you get your own ship's heat is elevated, it makes the weapon deal more damage. So essentially, like throw yourself into silent running and get yourself like 1,000% heat, and you have a death ray.
Great.
That's thermal conduit. Not one
That
you
is
would pair with a thermal vent beam. You would be very counterproductive.
Who in their right mind would use thermal conduit? I mean, it just seems like something where it's like, okay, you're doing it for the lulls.
Yeah, I've never seen it used outside of like a lull heavy PvP attack ship, and actually on plasma accelerators because those generate a ton of heat. So yeah, it's like the move is, interdict your target, go silent running, fire shield cell banks to heat yourself into infinity. And when you're at over several 100% heat, a blast of every gun on the entire ship is a plasma accelerator with thermal conduit, and you just one-shotting large ships. Or one or two shotting. You're one-shotting the shield on an enemy corvette or something like that.
Well, it's a pretty significant buff, right? It's 150%, so it's capped out, or 160% damage buff with the thermal conduit.
I don't have it. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Yeah, it can be pretty huge. And imagine you're using overcharge. I mean, there's no reason to use like an efficient mod on that, right? Because you're wanting the heat. So you put overcharged and thermal conduit, so you've got plus 70% to begin with, and then you heat your ship up. And yeah. If you have enough module reinforcements, you can survive for a long time overheating. A long, long time. So not a typical use. Not a typical use for sure. Okay. I think so. So generally, when people pull out the beam laser, yeah, it's a thermal vent is the one you go for. General engineering on lasers. The thing that you don't realize about, or some people don't realize about lasers, is how quickly that damage fall off starts. 600 meters. That's rough. You have to be so close to. When you look at how much damage your gun is doing, like, let me take the engineering off of this gun. So by default, this beam laser is doing 12.5 damage per second. That's only if you're within 600 meters of your target. So, and the laser goes out to 3,000 meters. So when I first started playing, like, I was doing efficient mod on all my lasers, and I thought I was so cool. Because you get a ton of benefit. You know, you're getting like a 30% damage buff and lower distributor draw, lower heat, all this stuff. It's great. You can fire the lasers forever. But the damage is still pretty weak, you know, plus 30%. As soon as your target is like 1,000 meters away, which is really common, hard to stay within 1,000 meters of anything that you're fighting, you're doing significantly less damage from the fall off. So the real trick becomes, you probably ought to be using long range, and it's right around, for most of the time, it's right around that 1,000 to 1,200 meters is the turning point where long range is dealing more damage than any other mod, kind of no matter what. So that's kind of the rule. And I think most of the time when I'm seeing people use lasers, like you said, like lasers on your Corvette to bleed the shields away, are those long range?
Yeah, they're all long range.
Yeah,
They're all
gotta have
long
it.
range thermal vent, and mine are actually they're kind of undersized. You know, I use, gosh, I forget. I think it's the size 1s and size 2s, and
Okay.
it's enough to get the shields, you know, shields down, and it really doesn't draw my distributor very much.
Right.
So I can be recharging my shields to some degree at the same time. With that,
Yeah, because the size 4 laser is insane.
Yeah,
Having
I
two
mean,
of
I
those
have-
on a Corvette is like mighty,
Yeah,
but holy
no,
cow.
I have 2 multi cannons instead. So
Nice.
Yeah.
yeah, I just have like my larger ones are multi cannons and my smaller ones are beams, and it just gets the job done. I mean, it's
Mhm.
always kind of this whole, you know, which hard points do you do this and which ones do you do that, you know, but I just kind of said, you know what, I'll just go with the beam small. If they're underpowered, I'll just swap it out and just put one on a bigger hard point. So, but I haven't needed to. So,
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, because the multi-cannons use so much less energy.
yeah.
You know, kinetic in general is using a lot less energy per damage. So putting them on your larger hard points makes for a good ship build. So
Yeah, and it's nice to have those pips on either thrusters or shields, you know, as much as I can in a
Absolutely.
CZ. So, yeah.
sure. Okay. Going down the list, the burst laser. I don't use bursts very much. I just haven't found a really great. I don't know. I just they haven't worked great for me. I kind of like, I either want the thermal vent effect or just the higher damage in general if I'm going to use a laser at all. But you know, bursts, long range could work well for that too. I've also thought about focused on a burst. Let me pull out a burst laser here on this ship and look at the focused mod. So focused is sort of like a long range light, where it extends the maximum range out to 6,000 meters, but the damage fall off isn't eliminated, where long range totally eliminates the damage fall off. With focused, the long range, or excuse me, the damage fall off starts at 1,000 meters, so it's a lot better. But the main point of the focused mod is you get a slight increase to heat, but you're getting 120% armor piercing. So if you're going to do, I kind of think this is the move if you're going to do like an all lasers build, is consider focused potentially instead of long range. And this would probably only work on a ship where you really can dictate the combat range. So like a Corvette, probably not going to work out that well.
Yeah.
Because you do still want to try to be as close as you can to 1,000 meters from your target. So if you're in a ship that can move really well, I think focused could work as an alternative to long range and deal a lot more damage to hulls because of that bonus. Like here's a size 2 gimbaled burst laser. With focused, it has 77 armor piercing. So you're dealing nearly full damage to any ship in the game, no matter the size. Like,
Yeah, that's significant.
yeah, like Type 10 has higher armor rating than that, but there aren't very many ships, and you're still doing like a significant portion of your damage. That's pretty unheard of for a laser. That's one of the reasons that they don't work that well against hulls. It's not just the resistances; it's the armor piercing problem. Now, larger hardpoint mounts, like larger sized guns, have higher base armor penetration. That goes for lasers as well. But you'd still like to have this buff. So I think that's something to consider. But for the most part, focused, nothing excites me here about the different modifications. And I'd rather have either the lower energy usage of the pulse laser or just the blistering damage of the beam laser. Any comments on that?
I mean, I have a federal
bursts?
fun. You have a federal fun ship that's a mix of burst. They're focused bursts and some rapid fire pulse with phasing sequence.
Okay.
And that's because I think phasing sequence is only a pulse laser engineering mod.
Yes.
Yeah. So I had the phasing sequence in order to get some damage on the ships before the hulls before the shields come down. But the focus is what you suggested for me to do to add some burst with that. So I have it all mixed up. The only problem with the federal gunship is that it's a tank. And just like the Corvette, it's hard to stay on target because I'm going like flying at like 400 meters per second and everybody else is going like 500-600 meters per second. It's like I can't keep up with anybody. So yeah. So it's good. It's a good ship to have as a support vessel if we're all doing like I don't want to say a piranha night because it's a medium ship, but if we're doing just horsing around night, it's a good thing to kind of have there, stripping some shields, tagging some things and like a disco night or something. Yeah, it's a fun little ship that way, but I mean, I need to have something faster.
I'm looking at EDSY right now. Phasing sequence is available on burst lasers.
Okay. So
not just pulse. I think it is not available for a beam. Hold on, let me check a beam.
No, beam's pretty limited actually.
Yeah.
Beam has no phasing damage. Okay. So the burst. Okay, so one more thing about the burst laser. So let's assume we're using focused or something. I don't know. I'm pulling that out. Long range might still be better. It depends on the ship, right? So let's see, focused versus long range. My armor piercing is only 35 on a size 2 burst laser with long range. That's a pretty significant. I don't know. I'd have to math that out because against small ships, the long range would almost always be better. But I wonder what's the ship size where that would change and it would start to be better with focused. Okay, but regardless, focused. Burst lasers have the experimental inertial impact. It's the only one that has this.
Okay, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, and so once again, this isn't going to work unless you're on a pretty nimble ship because it adds 3 degrees of jitter. Now, 3 degrees of jitter, what does that look like? That makes a gun spread look like a pacifier frag cannon. Like it's not like a full-on frag cannon spread. That's more like 5 degrees. But 3 degrees is a lot. You would be doing your attacking within 1,000, maybe 1,500 meters with this. So focused would be totally fine. You're not hitting anything outside of that range anyway because of the jitter. But inertial impact, for all that jitter, you get a 50% damage boost and it's kinetic damage. So it makes the gun 50-50 kinetic and thermal, but it's not subtracting 50% damage from the thermal and making it kinetic. It's adding 50% thermal or 50% kinetic on top of the normal damage of the gun.
That's the inertial impact.
Yes, that is the inertial impact experimental. It's tough to use because of that thing, but you imagine a focused one, since you're going to be up close anyway. You're dealing full damage up to 1,000 meters. You have 77 armor piercing on a size 2 laser, which is insane. And it's got kinetic damage. So let's see, the damage per second on this gun is 15.4. That's a lot for a gun that doesn't run out of ammo.
So I should put it on my Cobra Mark V.
This might be cool. These might be really cool on the 3 mediums of a Mark V. Yeah, absolutely.
On a Mark V, why not use like short range? Besides focus to get
now we're getting into it here. So the lasers use a lot more energy than kinetic weapons. So putting them on the mediums of a Mark V, we've only got a size 4 distributor. So I don't even need to math that out. Like it's going to be difficult to keep those guns firing all the time. You're going to need a lot of pips and weapons to pull that off. So I don't know, maybe it wouldn't work out, but if you wanted to experiment with a burst laser, I'd love to see somebody trying focused with inertial impact, because I bet that would be a mean beast. It wouldn't be something you'd sit there holding the trigger down all the time. But yeah, if you could figure out how to use it, that would be wild. The burst laser has this kind of like a bunch of quick little bolts, and then almost like a reload time between shots. It's a little less about holding the trigger down and more about pressing it repeatedly. Kind of fires differently. Okay. That's probably the coolest burst laser I can imagine. I hope it works for somebody. I think that I talked, when we talked about all the PowerPlay guns, that Cyto Scrambler, which is the size 1 fixed burst that has like 238% damage, but it has only 1 armor penetration. So it doesn't essentially deal any damage to hull. And it has extra jitter and all this stuff. I did some further experimenting with the Cobra Mark V, and actually I've started using a pair of these in the smalls on that ship, and I went and put long range on them, which I thought would not work because I thought I wouldn't be able to hit anything at range. But that's because I had always been using inertial impact on top of the original jitter. So I had like 7 degrees of jitter or something on those guns. It was awful. And yes, I was using short range because I was correct. You couldn't hit anything outside of 500 meters. Sometimes you couldn't even hit things inside of 500 meters because of the massive jitter of the gun. So we take it the other way. I give up that 50% kinetic damage, which I love and hated giving up. But they actually work pretty good with long range. And it almost doesn't matter what experimental effect. I think I used flow control to make them fit onto smaller ships easier, just because it really didn't matter. If I can't use inertial impact on a burst laser, I don't care what experimental effect it is. But anyway, I found them to be pretty effective in the small hard points here. And I was able to hit ships out to like 1,200 meters. And I mean like couriers, like relatively small ships, and hit them effectively.
The Cytos essentially have scramble spectrum built into them. Is that right?
No, they have a huge damage increase between the fire rate and just the raw damage buff, because they fire faster than normal baseline as well. It's effectively 238 or something % increase in damage over a normal size 1 burst laser. But the armor piercing is 1. So it effectively does no damage to any ship's hull, even a Sidewinder. It does like minuscule, like decimal point damage to any ship's hull. That's the trick with the Cyto. It's only effective against shields, but it's hugely effective compared to any other gun in your size 1 slot. It's doing, 200% of normal damage. So that's the deal. So yeah, long range made that pretty effective because the damage fall off is rough. Their range is shorter than a normal burst laser. So with long range, they still only go out to 2,000 meters, and the damage fall off starts at 1,200. But that's pretty good. You're doing full damage out to essentially 1,200. let me throw this back on here so I can make sure I have those numbers correct, because I'm going to be angry with myself if I say it wrong from memory. Okay, so Saito, normally the maximum range is 1,000 meters. So if I and the damage fall off is 600. If I long range this, I'm going to get 2,000 and 1,200. So long range, we're 2,000. Oh, never mind. Because that's right. The long range mod maxes out the damage fall off too. This was the deal. Okay, the first thing I tried was focused on this Mark V with Saitos, which gave me the 2,000 meter range, but only 1,200 meters was the damage fall off start. The armor piercing, 120% boost to armor piercing from the focused mod is still only 2.2. Right? So it's still not doing any hull damage. That's still pointless. So I was like, this is stupid. Why did I do this? Oh, that's right, because I had to spend all these materials that I'm earning doing PowerPlay. So I don't care anymore because I have too many materials. So then I went back to the engineer and changed them over to long range, which I should have done to begin with. So 2,000 meters, always doing maximum damage. It's awesome. And these are this is a size 1 burst laser that does 27.4 damage per second. Insane. And yeah, I have to do a little bit of pit management, a little more pit management than I usually do on a Cobra Mark V, but it's okay. Yeah. So I think that's actually a pretty cool gun. And you still want to have it on a really nimble ship. I think the Mark V is perfect because I think it's the perfect small ship. It's the ultimate small ship, and everyone should get one. Okay, let's talk about pulse lasers. These are like my favorite laser because this is kind of a sneak attack, but rapid fire, which doesn't work on any other laser. Rapid fire is awesome on a pulse laser. You can put it on a burst laser, but the thing that it makes more rapid is not the thing you want. It just doesn't, like, the damage equation just doesn't work out very well. You still end up with these big gaps between the shots, and it's just not that great. However, rapid fire on a pulse laser gives you a approximately 70% boost to damage per second. And remember, the pulse laser doesn't have those, a burst and then a gap where you're not firing. It's just pop, 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 right? So with rapid fire, you get a small amount of jitter. It's only half a degree. Not that big a deal. But, with this laser, remember, you've got this nasty damage fall off that starts at 500 meters. You're going to try to be up close to your opponents anyway. So the jitter is inconsequential. The trick with rapid fire is you get that damage per second boost purely from the fire rate. And to make up for that, they've given you a minus 35% distributor draw. So this thing's damage per energy is better than a beam laser. And that's what I love about it. Because I love ships that aren't forcing me to keep like 4 pips in the weapons capacitor all the time. So yeah, the damage isn't as high as a beam laser. Let me directly compare. So I've got a pulse laser with rapid. I'm going to put a beam laser of the same size, and let's make it long range, which doesn't change the damage. Okay, damage per second on the beam laser. Never mind, the pulse laser does more damage. The beam laser, these are size 1s. The beam laser is doing 7.68 damage per second. The pulse laser with rapid, and that's long range, so that's the most damage you're going to do for its whole range. The pulse laser, if you can stay within range, does 10.5. So that's like a 33% damage boost over the beam laser. And what's the distributor draw? The pulse is drawing 0.2. The beam laser is drawing 0.211. So the pulse laser, again, if you can manage your range, because you're going to need to, does more damage than the beam laser for less distributor draw. It's an exceptional gun. I urge everybody, try it out. Rapid fire pulse. Only on a ship that can really move, though, because you do need to stay, that damage will fall off very quickly after 500 meters. But it's really cool gun. It's really fun. The distributor draw is deceptively low for the damage. It's really fun. A couple of these on a small ship. Gimbals are handy because you really do want to be able to, when you're that close, the ship's zipping all around in your face. It's not like you can hold on a target with fixed lasers very well. So I love them. I have a ton of them engineered this way. The experimental effect, dealer's choice. There's phasing sequence. You get minus 10% damage, but you're dealing 10% of the remaining damage directly to the hull through shields. That can be cool. Scramble spectrum causes module malfunctions randomly. I don't know, thermal shock, add heat to your target. That could scare somebody. I think the deal is it makes NPCs sometimes stop boosting or stop firing hot guns. The AI will react to their heat being increased. So there's lots of things. Emissive, you can put emissive on a pulse laser.
NPCs actually behave differently. I always thought they cheated.
They do cheat in some ways, but they are coded to do certain things. And when you increase their heat, they will boost less. And like if they have like plasma accelerators or railguns, they'll fire those less. Stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Emissive, you can put emissive on a pulse laser. That increases the target's signature, sensor signature, which makes your gimbals track better and makes it so they can't drop your lock when they fire a heat sink and stuff like that. Concordant sequence. This is one of the wingman shield regeneration ones. Or you could put multi-servos or oversized on here. I would still recommend oversized over multi-servos. They are exactly the same damage benefit of, I think it's 3% additional damage. But oversized gets it just by just flat. Gets a little bit of damage boost, where multi-servos gets it the same amount of damage boost as a fire rate increase, which means technically it's drawing more distributor to get that same damage boost. So I don't like multi-servos on any gun ever. Although I should say that Commander Mr. Indigo has theorized that if you were using scramble spectrum to cause random malfunctions on the target, multi-servos might cause that to happen more often. When we're talking about a difference of 3%, I don't think it's meaningful, but fair to mention that might be true.
Wouldn't that be pairing rapid fire with? Is that what you said? Pairing rapid fire.
Yeah, well, we're doing rapid fire. I'm just thinking of experimentals to add onto the gun. Like rapid fire already is on there when I'm looking at it. So oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm stupid. Yes, what you said is completely correct. That is funny. I'm going back to this conversation that I had with him on Discord about how, but what if you're using multi-servos with maybe I misunderstood him. Because that would be a weird thing to be arguing about the difference between scramble spectrum and multi-servos, which are both experimental effects. So he must have been talking about.
The same could be true though if you're using rapid fire versus focused with this and spectrum though, right?
I suppose. Now I think I just totally misunderstood what he was trying to tell me, and I'm going to have to go back to that. And see what the hell he was actually saying, because I think I was like, nah, you're crazy, and come to find out I wasn't even listening to what he was saying. Okay, so I'm assuming that I was a jerk to him at one point and didn't understand and didn't listen to him. So let's see, what are there any other reason to do another mod? I don't know. All the other things still apply, like focused, long range, on pulse. They all do the same thing that they did for burst. So, I think probably for the most part, if you're not using rapid, where's my, rapid fire, the rapid fire mod, then everything kind of goes back to what we said about the other lasers, the other types of lasers, where it's probably long ranged, but I don't know, maybe focused is okay if you're on a ship that can move well. But I do like rapid fire on pulse for the sake of that very, very high damage per energy. Really exciting. Plus, it goes faster. That pop of the pulse laser is like very fast.
Feels so good. It feels
It's
so
like
good.
A lot of fun.
50% faster. Yeah, it's excellent. And rapid fire's an interesting one. Not something you generally put on a gun that has limited ammo, but I don't know, now that the engineering has been rebalanced and mats just fall out of space when you cough, maybe it doesn't matter. And I synth ammo a lot more than I used to. I'll tell you that. So rapid fire could be an interesting mod for like a multi-cannon or something. I know somebody around here was flying one. We were in some conflict zones and their Python had like 4 large rapid fire multi-cannons on it. And I was like, really? Rapid fire? You're going to spend your ammo so fast? But it was like, it looked like a flamethrower. Whenever he pulled the trigger, it was like the ship it was the graphics and the sound it made. It was ridiculous. So I don't know, could be fun. Maybe we'll talk about other guns at a different show or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pulse, it's like a sleeper, and for some reason it just doesn't work the same on Burst, which is a shame. But oh well. I can't think of anything else interesting to say about that.
Well, we mentioned the wing concordant sequence. Is there anything to be said with that? Is that where you're throwing out like long range, and just keeping everybody in line of sight and shooting them? With it?
Okay, so yeah, so there's 2 types. Let me see here. So these are experimental effects. So concordant sequence is one that can be applied to pulse lasers. Do I have a burst laser? I can put concordant on burst lasers as well. So what concordant does is if you're in a wing with somebody and you shoot them with this laser, it will heal their shields instead of harm them. Concordant does it by applying a temporary shield recharge buff that makes their shield generator recharge faster for a time. So it works like the way corrosive ammo works. It applies the buff for like 5 seconds or 10 seconds or something, at which point it will expire and you could shoot them again to reapply it. So that's for bursts, and pulses have that. It doesn't matter how close you are, like if you're outside of your damage fall off, because you're just tagging them with this buff, and their shield generator is the one actually doing the recharging. So it can be very effective. You tag somebody real quick, give them a little boost, especially if it's a bi-weave. It can make their shield refill extremely quickly. Though there's a different one for a beam laser, so I'm going to throw a beam on this so that I can make sure I'm right.
Regeneration.
What's it called?
Sequence. Regeneration sequence.
Yes. Okay. Regeneration sequence. Okay. Beams can also use concordant sequence, I've just discovered, but beams are the only gun that can use regeneration sequence. This one works differently. It directly puts essentially the laser's energy as a bonus into their shield. So it's sort of like you are feeding your weapon distributor energy into their shield as charge. So for this one, it does matter if as far as I know, it does matter if your damage fall off is coming into effect and you have to hold it on the target. You're essentially pouring energy into the shield, just as you would drain the energy from a shield if you shot an opponent. So, yeah.
You have to be the cleric.
You're right, exactly. But with either of these types, really. But the main difference is you have to hold the beam on the target to recharge their shield with regeneration. With concordant sequence, you're applying a temporary buff that will then run on its timer. So you can do just a quick little zap and then move on. So if you have like a huge beam laser on a Corvette or a pair of them with regeneration sequence, you can prevent the death of any person. Basically, like there are scenes of a pair of cutters, each with a size 4 or a regen sequence beam laser, and then the rest of the guns are turrets, and they can just sit there and out heal any incoming damage to each other, like forever. Like they can't be killed. Like it would take station guns to kill them, if that. Whereas concordant sequence is definitely the one to go with if you have small lasers, maybe even medium lasers, because with those, the healing effect is so much less because it's based on the output of the beam laser. So if they're small and they're not dealing that much damage, then it means they're not healing that much. But concordant is the same no matter what. Tiny little laser, pop somebody with concordant sequence, and they've got like 10 seconds or whatever of accelerated shield regen. Excellent job.
Yeah, that's great. We did that Stronghold Carrier assault a couple months ago, and we had a couple of guys in there with regeneration sequence beams, and we were able to stay in there for forever, essentially, as long as we were near.
Yeah,
it was really great.
They're keeping it up. Yeah, and you do have to be in a wing to make that work, but
Yes.
that's nice because you can easily target your wingmates and see when their shields are being drained, and yeah, it's a cool thing. Maybe it says something about me. I have never engineered a laser with any healing effect. I don't know if am I the asshole? Anyway, I don't know.
Well, how much flying in a wing do we do? I know we kind of do it
Yeah.
more now, but I think some of these things are built for people who are winging up, and
Right.
Burr and those guys had some sort of 54 pilot meetup. Yeah, they were in SRVs, but still there was 54 people in an instance.
Yeah.
And we only had like 7 or 8 or whatever, but we had a bunch of folks heading off to distant screws. And I think that's the most that we've had in an instance, at least since the Thargoid war, which we had a lot of people in instances, but you really didn't need regeneration sequence because everybody's shieldless. Or everyone who's worth
Right.
Yeah, should be shieldless.
Everyone should be. If you're not, I'm not doing anything about it.
Right.
I think for me, it comes down to I prefer ship builds that lasers are not always my go-to. Like I have my fun things that I do sometimes. I've been enjoying these cyto scramblers. I like my rapid fire pulses, but usually my primary damage is some kind of kinetic weapon, or it's going to be plasma accelerators. That's just what I tend to prefer. So if I have another gun, and I don't know, lately the smaller guns, I've been doing multi-cannons. I just don't do that much laser stuff to begin with. And if I'm doing something in a wing, I am probably maximizing my damage output. And my I guess my instead of stopping to heal my teammate, I'm thinking the real way to protect my teammate is to kill the other thing faster. It's not that I don't try to support my wingmates. I will happily pull aggro off of them anytime I can, or try to attack see when their shields are dropping and attack the people that are hurting them and things like that. But I don't know. For some reason, I've just never engineered a laser this way. So maybe I'm not the cleric.
No, you're the tank, or you're the DPS.
Is the rogue.
I'm usually not the tank either, right? I'm not flying the large ship. Yeah, I'm something like that.
Danger.
Wow, I never thought about this for D&D for elite wing configurations.
Yeah, or it doesn't have to be D&D. Like you can take the Overwatch. You have to have a mix of different skills in order to make it work.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I mentioned that carrier assault, because I think that was the first time I think that we really had a different role in a group with us. And it was kind of nice to have that kind of separation of, hey, you have one of these guys in your wing, kind of stay around them, protect them, because they're going to protect you.
Right.
And it was kind of really nice. This game just really incentivized those individual roles. I mean, if they did, then these wouldn't be locked behind engineering in the first place. There could be a module for this. But no, these are great.
That is interesting. That attacking a stronghold carrier is one of the very few times where there really is like pretty much insurmountable incoming damage. Like that instance will just keep ramping up. If it doesn't kill you, like unless you're really careful and you keep going way far away from it to try to lose the aggro or whatever, that's no fun. If you stay in there and you stay in the furball, like it will keep ramping that damage to a level that you cannot sustain forever. So that's interesting. That and like in a conflict zone when the spec ops ships come in and you get you roll a 1 and they all attack you. Those are the times when it's like you either leave or you better have a wingmate or two because it's going to be ugly.
Well, not to get down this rabbit hole, but I can't wait for them to release a higher difficulty, a higher threat level for those power combat zones. Because once you are in a way competent
that's right.
commanders, it just becomes cheese. Everybody just melts.
Right. Even right as soon as there was just 2 of us, it was like even if spec ops all attacked one of us, it was still. I mean, it was like I had to concentrate, but I mean. Yeah, it's outside of that situation. It's trivial with 2. It's a high-ish difficulty. It's one of the higher difficulty things. And I'm like speaking from a perspective of like, yeah, I realize like I'm good at combat in here, so it's going to be very difficult for a lot of people. It's a pretty high difficulty thing.
It's tough solo.
Let's get it's pretty tough solo. I've gotten to the point where I will actually try to ignore the spec ops in the power play ones, especially. The ships are configured differently for power play conflict zones. They have a ton of module armor. In regular conflict zones, I concentrate a lot on module damage and I get a lot of kills faster that way. Does not work. Full stop in power play conflict zones. Those ships have a ton of module reinforcements. I can pretty much never secure like a power plant kill on any of those ships when well configured for that. So I switch back to just raw hull damage in those, and I try to ignore the spec ops because for one thing, you don't get any real bonus for killing them.
Right.
They're a lot harder to kill, and they're worth a little bit more merits. They're worth in maybe like in the 400 range merits per kill compared to 256 or whatever for a regular ship, but they take ages to kill and it's real dangerous if you're solo and they focus you.
Yep.
I don't know if a tricked out Corvette could do that well in that situation. I mean, it takes so long to kill them. They're gonna have I have done it with my Python 2, all 4 spec ops when they were focusing me. It's really hairy. I had to kite them a lot. It was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in the game. And even if I managed to keep my shields up the whole time, they have phasing damage, and my poor Python had 34% hull by the time I'd killed them all. And I was like, my shield never dropped. How do I have 34% hull? Because they just, the whole time, they're blasting me with this phasing damage, and it really adds up after a while. So yeah it's tough.
And the Python isn't exactly as tough a ship because it's
I'm paper underneath my shield.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. If that shield goes down, you run.
Exactly. I have enough time. If my shield does drop, I have enough time to exit the battle. Or apparently get phasing damage the whole time. So yeah, it was only like 600 something hull that they managed to kill through my shield, but nevertheless, it still happened. Which is a lot harder than a lot of other conflicts.
But besides the module hardness, though, the power conflict sounds a great place to take some lasers. You're going to be there for a while.
That's true. They take ages. I synth a lot, or actually, I just go reload because there's also no bonus to finishing the conflict zone, so I don't mind if I restart it 12 times. Except for except for those fucking spec ops, right? Because if I restart it and I'm immediately going to get 4 more spec ops, I'm like, damn. So maybe I stick around. Just once you kill them, they're not going to come back, at least in that sequence. So
Right.
Well, all right. That was a wild laser thing. Maybe we'll do a different thing next time. I hope we'll spread these out. Maybe.
Yeah.
Let's see. By next week, will we have any news? I don't think so. I think do we have
Probably
to wait 2
not.
weeks?
Yeah, I mean the FU is 2 weeks from now. And then the update's 2 weeks from now. So next week's a slow
Is
news
it
week.
really?
I mean, you could do kinetic
God, they're making me
weapons.
wait so long. We could go over basically the kinetic. There's a ton of. Is there a ton of kinetics, or am I mixing it? Well, okay. What do we got? Cannons,
We haven't talked
multi-cannons.
about. We actually haven't talked about hull theory. So I think maybe if we do
okay.
armor and hull and all that kind of stuff, and
Yep.
maybe get some
Yeah.
people to bitch about military slots at the same time, that would be fun.
Oh,
Shig,
that'd be
I'm
great.
talking to you. That way you can get alternate offense, defense, offense, defense.
Okay, that's a good idea. All right,
Yeah, and
so
then
I
we
guess
could do-
we'll do another one of these. We'll have to have time
Mhm.
for another one of these next week.
Yeah, not to mention the core modules. While they're not all infusing, I think a distributor could be a quick conversation along with PowerPlay. Kind of wiping those together could be interesting. But not a whole lot to go through.
No, just you just always do charge enhanced. What do you mean? There's
Yeah,
nothing
it's
interesting
always-
about a distributor.
Lance.
You always, here it is. I'll do distributor right now. You always do charge enhanced. The rare cases where somebody doesn't do charge enhanced, it's because it's an exploration build and they're trying to massively undersize it, which I wouldn't do for my exploration ships anyway. I would just get a normal size with charge enhanced and deal with the mass. Like it's not that big a deal because I want to have that stuff ready. For experimentals, I use cluster capacitors. Superconduits is fine. Superconduits is common. That the combination of charge enhanced and superconduits maximizes the charge speed, and superconduits gives you a small penalty to the capacity, but your charge speed is great. Full 50% better on all three. I've actually used to do that all the time. I switched all my ships to cluster capacitors because when I mathed it out, technically 2.6% bonus to capacity on each one, and I still have 42% charge rate. Technically, it works out slightly better, even though they seem like they're almost in opposition to each other. You know what I mean? Your charge enhanced, and then cluster capacitors is increasing the capacity with a slight negative to charge rate, but the negative is smaller than the positive that it's adding. So anyway, whatever. Between the two, you literally, if you're not like looking at the numbers, it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a scenario where the superconduits allows you to keep up faster, but I'm sure that's a very niche thing, like compared to the cluster. I've done both, and cluster capacitors has won out for me. Like originally, I did the math, and it was like cluster capacitors is the obvious choice. And then in some of the forums and some of the places, people were saying no superconduits. So I kind of messed around with it. Then I kind of ended up going back, and I'm like, yeah, I like the cluster conduits better. It just feels better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The maximum recharge at the cost of a little bit of capacity. So that's superconduits. I think the time when that would be technically better is if you are doing continuous fire. So if you're like in an all laser build, that might work out, but it's only going to become better after the point where you would have expended the capacity of the other mod. Right. So you're in this edge case of that final 8% of your charge speed. That's the only time I can think of where it would make a difference. So anyway, do what you want. But the point is charge enhanced always.
Yep.
And that's it.
That's the bonus.
This exploration build is like I've ever used engine focused.
Yes.
And
is that so you could undersize it?
I'm still using the same size. Honestly, I just
then you should have gone with charge enhanced because you gain nothing. You gain nothing. The deal because so if you pick any of the engine or system or weapon focused, what it does is it gives the max bonus to capacity and to recharge for that capacitor, but the
Sure.
other two get minuses to both.
Yes.
So that's a pretty sucky outcome for just to have like engine capacity be totally boosted. The only reason you would actually find that beneficial over just charge enhance is if you were using a distributor that's too small for the ship, because this would get your capacity over the threshold to be able to boost. So like the Jumpaconda that has like a size 2 distributor or whatever, I don't know which one it is, size 2 or 3, super undersized distributor, you have to put it on another ship that it fits on, engineer it engine focused, and then swap it to the Anaconda, because you can't get out of the dock with an unengineered distributor that small on an Anaconda until you engineer it. So anyway, that's the only point. Unless you're planning on doing that to your ship, charge enhanced.
Yeah. No, I mean, even my my Phantom Explorer, it has like 72 light years. It has a size 7 capacitor and a size 7 power distributor, and I have a 5D in there, and it's charge enhanced and stripped down,
And it still boosts.
It's great. I mean, the ship's tissue paper, but that definitely gets the job done. I mean, and it's very functional, and it flies nice, and it's. I mean,
you said that was a 5D or
5D.
Oh wow!
5D.
Yeah.
No, it's if you looked at my Phantom, you'd think I was crazy. But it was my second. No, it was my second engineering build, and I was going for as much jump range, and it still was fun to fly. And that was kind of the approach I took to it. And so, yeah, that 5D distributor is pretty small.
What drives did you put on it?
Drives. Let's see. I did 6D dirty drags, and I got some zip out of it. It's still fast. I mean, I was trying to get it as light as I could. 40 life support, 60 sensors, 5A power plant, overcharged.
So that's so size 6 thrusters. That's not undersized. It's the D, but it's not undersized. So yeah, you're not like totally, because that's the other thing that you do with these like absolute minimum mass ships is undersize the drives as well, which again you usually have to put it on another ship, a smaller ship, in order to do the engineering.
But the nice thing with these is that I could do the engine. It was a pinned blueprint, so I got it up to I got it up to G5 dirty just in the main dry dock.
Mm-hmm.
So
awesome.
Yep.
Totally great. I have nothing else to talk about except this community corner stuff that was typed in here that I'm going to read. In no particular order, Distance Cruise 3 event this Saturday. I hope that's correct. I saw Lark was in here typing, so I'm assuming it's correct. So this Saturday, that would be the
15th.
Looks at calendar 15th. High G hill climb to take place on Morgan's Rock. And there's a big system name in here with a bunch of numbers. Planet 6, be there or be square. They're meeting at Lark Shadows Waypoint. I assume you on the expedition will know what that means. We will be using the wing method to get everyone into the instance. The race, it's a race. 2 commanders at a time. The one that gets higher on the hill moves on. The other one's eliminated. Is there a time limit? That's awesome. All right,
it's
first place.
Until you're gonna. If it's a high G planet, so as you're trying to climb the mountain, you're either gonna take a tumble down, or it's basically you're gonna go up this as far as you can navigate, and then when you can't navigate anymore because of the gravity and all the other things, if that other person gets ahead of you, they win that heat. So basically, you're drag racing up a hill in a high G system.
Cool.
And the system is Daxie's Folly.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Love it.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
First place gets a shirt or a sweater with the Distance Cruise 3 logo or whatever, or the Loose Cruise logo or whatever. He's going to do whatever he wants. Second place gets a stainless steel tumbler, and third place gets a mug. and every other place gets slap on the ass. And
But you got
That's
to
what
fly to
this-
Idaho for it.
yeah, you got to go to Idaho, and then Lark will. He's a nice guy. He will warm up his hand first.
Yeah.
Next up, Commander Roy Cookson of the Loose Screws has been writing stories of his adventures out exploring with us. If anyone wishes to read them, they can be found in the Distant Screws 3 thread under Roy's stories. And finally, there is pink stuff in the ARC store. There is a set of free pink skins for all of the plasma on foot weaponry, which is Manticore, right? Manticore, yeah. All 4 of the Manticore guns: the sniper, the rifle, the pistol, and the shotgun have glorious pink skins that are being given away for 0 ARCs. You just got to sign into the store and buy them. And then along with that is a sale on all kinds of pink stuff. There's a new pink suit that looks like a Gundam to me, and they've had that suit in other colors before, but the pink ones, everything pink is on sale. There's a ton of ship stuff that's all pink because tomorrow's Valentine's Day. So, as is the Valentine's tradition, give money to companies because Valentine's Day.
Also, the 25th anniversary of my first date with Dr. and Mrs. Bloomingwind.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, when
that's
I
a
was-
way better reason to buy pink stuff.
you're
Yes.
gonna buy her a pink sheepskin.
A pink gun.
Yeah, I'm going to buy her a pink gun. Yeah, pink Glock. No, it's,
Jeez.
I actually bought her a sweater that hopefully arrives tomorrow. And it's kind of like a Irish shamrock themed, but it has pink in it. So she's getting it so that she could wear it for St. Patrick's Day
Sweet.
and in the run up to St. Patrick's Day. So it didn't outlive its usefulness like the Valentine's sweater she bought for herself from the same place that she can't wear after tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Congratulations on your first date anniversary.
First day
And-
anniversary.
And
It was a high pressure date on
yeah.
high pressure date on Valentine's Day, but the whole deal was between her work schedule as a nurse on the inpatient nurse and my call schedule. It was like the first day that we were both free after she asked me out on a date,
Nice.
and it was like we
Nice.
could do the 14th. That's the first day we're both free, but it's Valentine's
Do
Day,
you want to deal with that?
or we could do like March 1st. And the
Whoa.
harmonic convergence. We're like, okay, we're gonna go out the 14th. So she hasn't gotten sick of me yet. So
Wonderful.
yep.
All right. Well, that's the all of it. And if you've made it this far into the episode, once again, I am honored, and I issue you congratulations, and wonder if you'll make this mistake again in the future, but only time will tell. So, thanks for listening or watching, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed yourself. And thanks for joining me on this journey to Baromir and Bloomingwind.
Thank you.
And
Of course.
that's it. That's gonna do it for us. That was as loose and that was the most loose and screwiness that I can muster for the day. So, good night. Goodbye. Say goodbye, everybody. Bye. Oh my God.
Bye,
Goodbye,
everybody.
everybody.